חודש טוב, חנוכה שמח. No one has source sheets. Okay, anyone would like to share with someone who does not have? I would share mine, I just have one, so. Okay. First, the shiur is sponsored for the 2024-2025 academic year, which comes to an end in a week, by the Shendelman and Verenthal families in memory of Mel and Sylvia David, Zichronam Livracha, Menachem Mendel ben Avraham Meir, Tzivia Chaya v'Toiva Rivka, Zichronam Livracha, Bat Aryeh Lev v'Chava Idel, Zichronam Livracha. Okay. So we continue with our subject regarding the biblical figures, and we are on no page. So where it says Pulmus Limud HaTanach Harav Shlomo Aviner v'Harav Amnon Bazak. Okay, Rav Aviner and Rav Bazak. The common denominator is that there is a Rav before each one of the names, but they are very different. Each one of them represents a different hashkafa. Different yeshivot, a lot in common, but also a lot that is not that much in common. So this pulmus, this debate over how to look at biblical figures is something that came to the news. As you see, it's פורסם על ידי מערכת שבת, it's a newspaper, and basically they took our debate and debated it in public. How to view biblical figures, how to view their deficiencies, and everything we spoke about, but they added obviously some modern components to it. So, first, Rav Aviner, Rav Shlomo Aviner. Rav Shlomo Aviner says the following: ההסתכלות על התנ"ך מתחת לגובה העיניים. Oh, I need to have one small introduction. We will talk about what we say Tanakh begova העיניים. What is Tanakh begova העיניים? Like you read Tanakh and it's the same height of your eyes. You don't need to raise your eyes, which means don't look at them like our angels. Don't lower your eyes, which means don't obviously look at them as someone who is less than you, but begova העיניים. But the problem is that begova העיניים is what? Some people can raise their eyes, some people can lower their eyes, and some people can close their eyes. Okay, so this is basically the debate. So he says, ההסתכלות על התנ"ך מתחת לגובה העיניים, מאבדת את האפשרות לעלות מעלה ולהידבק בקדושתם של גדולי האומה. Rav Aviner still lives, so he's in our generation. So he says that looking at biblical figures מתחת לגובה העיניים, meaning not to raise your eyes to them, it will what? It will cause a damage in your ability to spiritually elevate yourself. כדי להעביר עליהם ביקורת, יש להיות טהור, קדוש, ונטול נגיעות. In order to criticize them, you yourself need to be pure, holy, and with no agenda, which means no one can criticize them. Okay, so you remember Rav Dessler after the Shoah? Okay, so now we have Rav Aviner who has a very strong opinion about it, which says like that. האם יש להציג את אישי, so that's the question, האם יש להציג את אישי התנ"ך כאנשים המורמים מעם, או שמא כאנשים כמונו עם מאבקים וקשיים, עליות וירידות, יצרים ונפילות, אורות ומחשכים? Should we present the biblical figures to our students, to our young students, to our adult students, to basically present them as people who are elevated from everyone else, they are not in the same madriga like anyone else, or people like us with struggles, with difficulties, with challenges, with ups and downs. לא כמלאכים אלא כבני אדם, בדרך זו נוכל להזדהות איתם, להתחבר עליהם ולקבל מהם השפעה טובה. So if we will look at them as us, like us, so we can obviously be inspired. So he says like that. Okay. ענקי עולם לא ולא, לא ההנחה ולא המסקנה, הם אינם בני אדם כמונו. Should I translate? You want me to get upset? Okay, I will obviously translate. Sorry. Basically says they are not people like us. Sounds very familiar, right? From רב דסלר, נכון. ולא מהנמכתם נקבל השפעה רוחנית. And by lowering them, and by viewing them as us, that's not how we're going to be spiritually inspired. קודם כל, הם ענקי רוח גדולי עולם, האבות הם המרכבה. The avot are like the chariot, God's chariot, they are the ones who carry God's name. אמרו רבותינו, השכינה שורה בהם, the divine presence dwells in them, במעשיהם, in their actions, באישיותם, in their personality, בנפשם, in their soul, ברוחם, in their spirit, בנשמתם, in their נשמה, ובאיבריהם, in their limbs and organs. לא במקרה, it's not by coincidence, ריבונו של עולם גזר בחוכמתו, את השם himself decreed, שהם יהוו ראשית האומה הישראלית. They will be the founders of the Jewish people. כלומר, שנתחיל את ההיסטוריה שלנו בענקי עולם. That we will start our Jewish history with what? With giants, people who are really not like us. That's him saying. I'm just translating now. I will tell you my comments a little later. ריבונו של עולם יכול לברוא עולם המתחיל מלמטה למעלה. דורות ראשונים יהיו נמוכים, גסים ושפלים ולאט לאט יתאפסו. It says, ריבונו של עולם, the master of all universe, obviously could create this world from what? From bottom up, which means from a very low level people, and then to what? To climb the mountain and to reach the highest people, or the most spiritual people. אך לא כך, but that's not what God did. אלא הוא יתברך גזר, but rather God decreed, שאברהם, יצחק ויעקב הם ענקי ענקים. But God decreed that what? That Abraham, Yitzchak and Yaakov going to be what? Those giants. וכן משה, דוד ושלמה ועוד. meaning I have a list. מאז האופי הנשגב שלהם מוטבע בנו, and since them, we in a way inherited some of these spiritual characteristics and some of their unique personalities, and that was imbued in us. הוא נכס לאומי. This is a national treasure for us. נפשי, רוחני, תורשתי של אומתנו. Meaning the founders of our nation were giants. We are not, but we have a little bit of their DNA. And this DNA is part of who we are. כך שגם כאשר אנו נופלים, so therefore when we fall and when we make a mistake, יש לנו דרך חזרה. We have a way back. אותם גדולי עולם קבעו את הטבע שלנו. So those giants, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, David, Moshe, Aaron, whatever, so they what? They gave us, they shared with us some of their DNA that will help us to what? To stand up again after we do something wrong. ודאי, אדם עלול לבגוד בטבע שלנו. Obviously, every human being might betray his own nature. אך הוא נשאר לעולם טבע. כך גזר אדון כל המעשים. That's how Hashem decreed it, which means even a Jew committed a sin, he can also what? Go back. do תשובה. בראשיתנו יהיו גאונים ענקים אדירים, כמובן, הם עדיין בני אדם. They are still people. So now he says they are still people. At the beginning, he says, הם אינם בני אדם כמונו. Not that they are not people at all. They are not people like us. Now he says they are people, not like us. הוא כבר כתב הרמב"ם, שאפילו אצל נביא ייתכנו חסרונות. Oh, now the Rambam says what? That even a נביא, you can find deficiencies even with a נביא. כן משה רבינו. אך לא בגלל זה הוא אדם כמונו. But it doesn't mean that now, that after he committed the sin, he is like us. הוא אומנם מפלנטה אחרת. You know what is פלנטה אחרת? Different planet, okay? When you hear a Israeli says to you, תגיד לי, אתה מפלנטה אחרת, it's not a compliment. Okay? So it means like, where are you coming from? From Mars? Like, okay. So, גם לו יש כמה חסרונות, אבל הם אינם אותם החסרונות שיש לנו. He says, yeah, he has deficiencies, but it's not the same deficiencies like us, which means it's becoming very similar to what Rav Dessler says, without quoting him. Yes?
Do these Anakei Olam we're talking about, starting with Abraham, etc., were they born great, or did they achieve greatness? In other words, could they be a model that they also started simple, and achieve greatness in the same way we can aspire to that. We can also start and achieve greatness.
The only one that I can agree with you is Abraham, not Yitzchak and not Yaakov. So your question is basically is being zoomed only on Abraham. And for that you need to see, I mean, the Maharal talks a lot about that Abraham in a way started fresh from 70 or 40 or 3, it depends. Yeah, it depends. Okay. משה רבינו טעה, אומר הרמב"ם. משה רבינו made a mistake, that's what the Rambam says. הוא כעס על העם, he was angry on the nation. שמעו נא המורים, listen to me, O rebels. אם כן, משה רבינו כועס ואנו כועסים. So he says, in terms of the name, he is angry, I'm angry. So Moshe and I are best buddies, right? So he says, no. השאלה על מה כועסים? אנו כועסים על דברים קטנים ופשוטים. We are angry about silly things. ומנהיגם של ישראל כועס מפני שנשמתו הענקית נצבטת, בראותו עיכובים בהתעלותה של האומה הישראלית. Moshe Rabbeinu was angry. Why? Because he was so upset that the spiritual level of the Jewish people is not up to par with what he thought, and that's why he was so angry. This is not the same anger. Is it? Anger is anger. Now, there are different reasons to be angry. I can be angry that someone took my parking space, and I can be angry about someone who does not fulfill his potential, and I can be angry with decisions that are being made by whoever, but it all has a name of what? Of anger.
But there are different levels.
Different levels, for sure. And I will tell you that everyone who is angry, and it's not like just an angry person, but if you ask him why were you angry, and he will give you the reason, he would think that what? That this is the most important reason to be angry for. Okay? So the thing is, basically what, and I'm not analyzing it yet, but basically what Rav Aviner says, he says, yes, he also was angry, but because the reason was different, so it was a spiritual anger, and we don't have spiritual anger. Okay? הם ענקי עולם ויש להם חסרונות. Yes, they are giants and they have deficiencies, but the deficiencies is חסרונות של גדולי עולם. Special kind of deficiencies. Because they are special kind of people, there are special kind of deficiencies. כך אמרו רבותינו, מפני מה לא נתגלו טעמי תורה? Why the Torah did not reveal its reasons? הרי שני מקראות נתגלו טעמן ונכשל בהן גדול העולם. כתיב לא ירבה לו נשים, לא ירבה לו סוסים, and שלמה המלך says what? I will have a lot of women and I will not commit sins, and I will have a lot of horses and I will not commit sins, and obviously he did. So he says, נמצאת למד שלושה דברים. So you learn 3 things. שלמה המלך היה גדול עולם. So שלמה המלך was one of the greatest. גם גדול העולם עלול להיכשל. Even if you are very great, you are also susceptible for failures. ולא בגלל זה יחדל להיות גדול עולם. And because of his sins, he's not going to what? To stop being a giant. וזה לשונו של הרמב"ם. מפורסם מעניין שלמה עליו השלום, עליו גודל מעלתו במדע ובחוכמה ושהוא ידיד השם, אפילו זה השלם הגדול טעה בזה. The Rambam says, even though Shlomo HaMelech is ידיד השם, is God's friend, and Hashem loves him and everything, he committed what? He committed a sin, but he's still what? He's still great. Now, there's no problem to say that, right?
So many sins.
Right. נכון? All right, and we spoke about it a little bit previous weeks, which means, basically what he says, what does he say? He says they are humans, they are special humans, and special humans have special deficiencies. And despite their deficiencies, they are still what? Great and special. Okay? So in a way, he does not say that they are angels. He's careful. He's not saying that. He understands that we need to learn from them. However, he says you cannot look at them like you. They are not you. They are gdolei olam, whatever that means. He doesn't want to say that. That's how he is careful. He doesn't want to say superhuman. He doesn't want to say angels, but he doesn't want to say just what? Regular people. So we need to analyze a little bit more. What's the definition? Yes?
But doesn't that give the Gedolim a free reign to commit Averis? More so than us?
No. When they commit Avera, they need to do tshuva.
They're still great. They don't, like if we commit an Avera, let's say like Shlomo HaMelech did, we would be finished as regular people. But he still retains his greatness. So that to me means that because he's so great, he's allowed more leeway, and David HaMelech as well, more leeway in committing averas than we as regular people are.
I thought you would ask something a little different. Maybe you mean that. I will maybe let me rephrase your question for a second. In a way, maybe that's what you said. When I read it, I was like, Rega, 1 second. If Hashem decreed that they are going to be Gdolei Olam, which means it was what? It was already predetermined that they are going to be Gdolei Olam, right? Which means even if they will commit a sin, they will continue to remain what? Gdolei Olam. So I didn't look at that so much as, oh, they can do whatever they want, because they did not know that. But from God's perspective, in a way, whatever they're going to do, they will remain Gdolei Olam. And if I will do what Shlomo HaMelech did, I probably will never make it. Right? Yeah. So that would be the problem. Yes.
The only thing that I remember learning about is that there might be a different hashgacha pratit for someone who is.
Do you remember where you saw it or no? Okay, so we need to see the source. I don't know. But obviously there are many issues from what he says in terms of hashkafa. Okay, but let's try to finish it and then to reanalyze it. Ashreinu she'anu am she'echel b'gdolei olam. So Ashreinu, we should be praised and we should be happy that we initiated, our people, our nation was initiated by גדולי עולם, וכן אין זה נכון שבהנמכתם נתחבר אליהם יותר טוב. אדרבה, אנו מסתכלים עליהם ואומרים מתי יגיעו מעשיי למעשה אבותיי אברהם, יצחק ויעקב. אנו מסתכלים כלפי מעלה. יש לנו דוגמה ואנו נמשכים אל על. אם הם אנשים כמונו, אין לנו ממי ללמוד. אין לנו על מי לשאוף, אין לנו להרים מבט כלפי מעלה. So he says, if they are like us, you will not be encouraged to lift your eyes. You will not be encouraged to see them as models. You will not be able to be spiritually inspired. This is not the way. You need to To immediately, at the beginning, to look up to them, and they are on like a pedestal to some extent, and this is the way you need to teach, this is the way you need to learn Tanakh. רגע. נכון, he says, שהרב שמשון רפאל הירש אמר פירוש דומה לזה, אך מלבד שאין חובה לקבל את פירושו, אתה אינך הרב שמשון רפאל הירש. You remember Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch? Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says that what? That exactly the opposite. They made mistakes, they are like us, and they were able to what? To become Gdolei Olam. To become Gdolei Olam. He says, that's true, that's what he said, but you know what? A, you don't need to accept his Perush. B, you are not Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. So what? I'm sure I'm not Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. I guess what he wants to claim is, he says it. מה שמותר לא לומר, לא בהכרח מותר לך לומר. What he is allowed to say, you are not necessarily allowed to say it. הרב הירש היה גאון וקדוש, מלא יראת שמיים. וכל הפירוש שלו על התורה מלא חרדת קודש עצומה מפני גדולי התנ"ך. And his entire interpretation to the Torah is filled with respect and fear from the biblical figures. אלא מדי פעם יש אצלו איזה פירור של ביקורת. But from time to time you have a little crumb of criticism at Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch's interpretation, לא מותר לנו אסור. I so resentful. First and foremost, not that it's going to, God forbid, to lower Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, do you know that the entire Perush on Chumash of Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch was what? Shiurim he gave to women in the Beit Midrash, in the Knesset. Yeah, Shiurei Parashat Shavua to the women. He spoke with them about the parasha. He spoke about modern lives in Germany. That's what he spoke. Anyone who knows anything about Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, he was stuck between what? Between the very reform and the very Haredi, and he tried to create some kind of what we call Torah im derech eretz. Okay, to try to. It's not modern orthodoxy, and it's not religious Zionism. Mamash lo. I'm not sure that Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch was a Zionist at all. No. So, but the idea is that he tried to merge, to intertwine the modern world and the Torah, and how to talk to his people, to tell them that there is, obviously, they need to be rooted in Torah, but modern world is not a terrible thing. There is obviously Bet Midrash Rabbanim, the Hildesheimer, I think they call it Bet Midrash Rabbanim, but it's called Bet Midrash Rabbanim, that Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, Rabbi Hildesheimer, Rav Hoffman, and many others. That has nothing to do if he was a Gaon, Kadosh, Tahor, whatever. He says it very clearly, and it's not crumbs. It's not like a perur here and a perur there. ממש לא. It's a big סופגניה. Okay? When you look at Rav Shimshon Raphael, and I did, okay, and I will say, I went over all his perush on all the Chumash. I don't think it's perurim. I'm not saying that that's the only thing he did. Definitely not. A. B, with all due respect, if he is allowed to say it, it's there. He wrote it. It's for us to learn from it. He didn't say, this is my opinion. It's only my opinion. And therefore, you can never use it. And just know this is my opinion and it's not your opinion. And I'm allowed to say it and you're not allowed to say it. Never. Exactly the opposite. Rav Shimshon Raphael used to talk to the people. His parshanut exactly on the Chumash, as I said before, was the women in the shul. It was not to like don't get offended, but like a great scholars who learn in yeshiva all day long. It was to the people. And then Parashat Shavua that he gave to his community. So I can be nice to many other things that he wrote. This one, historically, it's not correct. That's A. B, with all due respect to Rav Aviner, how can you say that he is allowed to say it and you are not allowed to say it? What is a Tana? Is an Amora? Is Moshe Rabbeinu? Rav Shimshon Raphael is what? He's a wonderful rabbi, a great rabbi from the 19th century, and he's not considered as a Tana or Rishon. He's a Charon like many others. He might be more learned. And even though he was so learned, he still said what? That they are like us and they made sins and they commit sins and they did tshuva and they became Gdolei Olam. And that's how you learn from them. So this one is obviously something that I couldn't hold on until the end. Yes?
Can you just give like a couple of examples? Don't go into them if you don't have time, but just to hear who are big examples of people who said, I'm saying this, but don't ever repeat it because it's just me.
The only thing that I know in the Talmud is that what we call halachai ve'ein morim ken. But that's about halacha. This is not interpretation, which means you can ask me a question and I can tell you, look, this is the halacha, but don't say it in the marketplace. Why? Because there are some people there that if they would hear that Rav Shai says it's allowed to do this, they are going to what? To drive on Shabbat. Okay, so you are a scholar, so I can tell you the halacha, but I'm asking you, don't tell it to the people in the marketplace. But that's halacha. I can understand. Halacha, you don't want people to what? To violate Shabbat, they eat not kosher, and not fast on Yom Kippur because of what I said. But here, Rav Shimshon Raphael wrote it to the masses. It was not only for, exactly the opposite. He wrote it to the masses. He didn't write it to Talmidei Chachamim. So what I'm saying is that what he said, I don't know where he has this. And that's what I'm saying to you. There's one in the Talmud that talks about halacha, but there is no such a thing that a rabbi will tell his talmid, I'm allowed to say it, you're not allowed to say it. There's no such a thing that I know of. If you have an example, bevakasha, the only one that I said in the Talmud, halacha ve'ein morim ken. Or you keep it here in the Bet Midrash, that's what you can do, but bachutz lo osim et ze. But that's it. Okay.
Tana makes a statement, and then we say that an Amora cannot argue with him if it doesn't have any other.
But between the Achronim, no such a thing. And even among Rishonim and Tanaim and Achronim and Rishonim, I think we spoke about it a bit, and the Hagdama of Rav Ovadia and many others says, מה פתאום, האמת. Whatever the truth is, yeah, with the tremendous respect, and you can take another Rishon to say, okay, I'm holding like him, and many other Rishonim, and disagreeing with this Rishon. Chazon Ish made in his Parashanut on the Mishnayot, sometimes against the Rishonim. Again, with tremendous kavod and everything, but here, no one will say that I'm not allowed to disagree with Reb Moshe Feinstein if I have good rayot. Yeah.
I may have said this in another shir, I may have missed it, but I keep on thinking about the example of Vayelech ish mibeis levi vayikachas bas levi. Chazal say that from there we learn that we can all be a Moshe. It doesn't say that it was, look at his yichus, look
Right.
at this, look at that. We all have a potential. So then how can I say this?
I don't know. The question here is very good. It says, even the Rambam says, no one can be a Navi like Moshe, but everyone can be like Moshe.
We all have potential.
Yeah. Moshe is a Navi and a Talmid Chacham. You can be a Talmid Chacham like Moshe Rabbeinu. What do you mean you can be like Moshe? Rabbi Akiva, according to the Gemara in Menachot, when he taught a class, Moshe Rabbeinu came to the class and had no clue what's flying. And Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, יש לך תלמיד חכם כזה, and you give the Torah through me, give it to Rabbi Akiva, and Hashem says, stop, כך עלתה במחשבה לפניי, don't tell me how to run my world. Okay? So basically, what do we see? We see can be Moshe Rabbeinu. Definitely you can be. And maybe to some extent it addresses your question. He was not born Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay? He was born as any other child. He was, yeah, the Midrashim says that when she opened up the little basket, there is a light, and yeah, wonderful, באמת, כל הכבוד, and יכול להיות שזה נכון. However, he was not born Moshe Rabbeinu. He had to make some decisions to become Moshe Rabbeinu. And by the way, when he started, even the Midrash says, הוא היה נביא טירון. What is טירון? Like in training. Like טירון, כמו בצבא. Okay? They are not yet soldiers, that's what the Midrash says. Navi Tiron. Until he became what? The ultimate prophet, the ultimate Navi. Okay, so let's go back. No, same things. Very similar to Rav Dessler. He represents, as I said before in the introduction, he and Rav Bazak are on a very different planeta. And Rav Aviner is more what we call today Chardal, not mustard. Charedi Dati Leumi. You know what it means, right? Okay. So, which means it's more, we will call it more to the right. I don't like those definitions because everyone says he's in the center, right? So, but it's definitely a little bit more.
So you think he's a right winger who doesn't want to discredit the Chachamim or the Gedolim?
Yeah, and especially in a reaction to, as I said, also I think last week or 2 weeks ago. I think it's 30 years. People here might remember better than me. That there was a revolution led by the Gush, Yeshivat HaGush, Gush Etzion, and Michlelet Herzog, in reading Tanakh, learning Tanakh, teaching Tanakh, and with that came some kind of a phenomena of not biblical criticism, but using sometimes biblical criticism, but also looking at biblical figures more in a modern way, and in a way to protect the children and the education of Aviner and many others, had to react. And again, like in any other phenomena, obviously there is the middle way, and then there are the extremists. Okay, that, yeah, I mean, you can take a very modern look on one of the biblical figures and to get to some outcomes that are terrible, even according to someone who is very modern and can tolerate a lot, but there are certain things that you will not be able to tolerate. And then you will ask me, רגע, אבל that's בגובה העיניים. Meaning, everyone needs to have limits. The question is, where do you want to put it? Okay. Now, יש תנאים להביע ביקורת. There are conditions. If you want to show criticism or to give criticism, there are some conditions that you need to follow. כדי להביע ביקורת על כל אדם, קל וחומר על גדולי עולם, צריך להיות טהור וקדוש, בעל יראת שמיים ובלי נגיעות. In order to criticize anyone, and especially גדולי עולם, you need to be pure, holy, God-fearing person, and without any agenda.
Raise your hand.
In my humble opinion, I fit. Like, if you think you can do it, so you are arrogant. So that's better. Like, I don't understand it. I mean, where do you get it from? Okay, we know that there is no rebuke so much anymore, or mitzvah tochacha, because there is no one who can be mochiach. But criticism is not tochacha. Criticism, here, it's more in the intellectual realm. Okay, it's in the analytic realm. You want to tell me that now there is no bikoret on Talmud, on negotiation in the Talmud, in the Shakra V'Tarya, in the Talmud. Now we need to stop thinking, we need to stop analyzing things, we need to stop critical, to have a critical mind, we just need to accept it the way it is. It's the say in Hebrew, קצת מוזר, little strange. And then he says what? אך לא תנח, לפעמים אדם מכניס בפירוש את הרהורי ליבו. אדם שאינו טהור מכניס את מה שיש לו בראשם של אחרים. By the way, I think he criticized the other opinion. Don't you think? I brought him first, but he's reacting. Okay, so he's criticizing another phenomena. So I guess he fits. רק אדם טהור כמו הרב הירש, המביע ביקורת, יש לו סיבות כאמור. אין חייבים לקבל, אך זהו פירוש של אדם קדוש. So now, Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, I think the last thing he wanted to be called is Adam Kadosh. Okay, he wanted to be an intellectual, he wanted to be a scholar, he wanted to be someone who can inspire people, but his aspirations were not necessarily, I think, to be holy. Okay, from what you read from him, that's A. He wanted to talk about kedusha, not being kadosh. That's A. B. He just bring up Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. But do you remember the Ramban? The Ramban says what? Chet chata Avraham, Chet chata Sarah Imenu. Rabbeinu Bachye, same thing. Midrash, same thing. So it's not only Rab Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. The thing is, and this is it's a tool that sometimes in the Haredi movement and in the Chardali movement you have, is you need to be kadosh, you need to be tahor. And obviously, if you are honest, obviously I'm not kadosh and tahor, I'm not holy and pure. So therefore, is what I can't do that. But there are only those people. And what are we? And who says that they are kedushim and tehorim? They might act in kedusha and tahara, but to say that someone is kadosh is very different. You understand what I'm saying? Meaning, I can behave or I can try to carry myself with kedusha, with holiness, but to tell me that I am kadosh, that's wonderful. If you feel like that, I don't know what to tell you. Okay, so let's just continue. I'll hold on for the questions. Let's just continue a little bit more. Chazal hayu baalei lev tahor. Our sages were pure-hearted. ואם הם אומרים ביקורת על גדולי עולם אנו מקבלים. And if they criticize those giants, we can accept it. גם לרש"ר הירש הייתה מגמה עליונה וקדושה, אך לא תנ"ך בגובה העיניים, או ליתר דיוק מתחת לגובה העיניים. שהרי דוד חטא בלא תנאף ואני לא, אם כן אני מעליו. לא אני צריך ללמוד ממנו, אלא הוא צריך ללמוד ממנו. Do you see? Now he's taking it to what? To the other extreme. He says, if you tell me that David and me are the same, David committed a sin with a married woman. I never did it. Who needs to lift his eyes to whom? David HaMelech needs to come here to learn from me. That's the extreme way. I don't think anyone says it. I think it's a I need to choose my words carefully. I think this is a bit of not a bit. This is exaggeration and extremism to take an approach, and I don't know. It might exist. Does not mean that it does not exist. People who seriously learn Tanakh and will say after they learn the story of David HaMelech, my God, I'm going to omit him from any place in davening. Yes, I'm not going to daven for David Avdecha Mashiachecha, David your servant, your Mashiach. I don't think he should be included in Tanakh. And he takes a whiteout, Tipex, okay, and start erasing every time in Tanakh that it says David name because he committed a sin with a married woman and I did not. With all due respect, I think this is mamash exaggeration. Yes.
If I remember correctly, Shai, I heard about Ezra Sofer in the time of the unshakenness of Adullah. There was a big business that they didn't want to put in the books of David and Shlomo in Tanakh, and in the end,
No. Shlomo. Not David. Never David. Shlomo. It's in Mishnah. The Mishnah says that maybe he will not have Chelek L'Olam Haba. Yeah. Which means what? They struggled with him. This is not Rashi. This is not Tosfot. This is a simple Mishnah. When the Mishnah says that Shlomo HaMelech, they thought about what? Take his Kohelet and Shir HaShirim and to hide it in a cemetery, okay, to make it Gniza, or not to even allow him, quote unquote, to go to Olam Haba. It means what? The rabbis read Tanakh and they struggled with it. And then they decided, you know what? No, he did A, B, and C, terrible, but he did E, F, D, N, M, lo יודע מה, and God allowed him to continue to be a king. Okay, how do we deal with it? This is not criticism. That's how, what do we do with someone that we are being challenged with? And always, with all due respect to all of us here, all of us Kedushim v'Tehorim, we didn't make it to Tanakh. Our names are not there. Okay, they are. So I'm not saying that they are angels. They are very unique people. They overcame something or they were chosen to be something. Settled. I don't know. Don't have any problems with that. Yes.
However, isn't it Shlomo's sons who split the kingdom?
It was already split. God told, split. Thank you. I just made up a word. Thanks for being understanding. Don't criticize me. Be careful. So the thing is that Hashem already told the Navi that he will let Shlomo reign over the entire Am Israel. But after that, because of what Shlomo did, the nation will be split. Yeah. So it's not Rehoboam really, in a way, didn't have any choice. He made a terrible mistake by being so stubborn and not to alleviate the taxation. But that was like quote unquote the reason. But he was not the cause. Yes.
There's a more modern day machloket between my very Haredi cousin and my husband. My Haredi cousin on this note says, my husband said to her that the Gedolim in Europe made a very big mistake when they told the Jews not to leave Europe and to go to either Israel or the United States. She said, absolutely not. The Gedolim never made a mistake. Never made a mistake. And it was better to have gone to Auschwitz. These are her words, so help me God. Which, even to say it, whatever. Better to have gone to Auschwitz than to go to any of the Trefin and Medinas. So you talk about someone who adheres to the concept of not criticizing the Gedolim today about the Holocaust.
So also don't there I can I can maybe come and say, look, they were so anti-Zionist and they didn't see any future in the land of Israel and America. So they said, you know what, let's just stay here and things will change. Okay, hopefully it will change for the better. Even though obviously we know that some of those Gedolim who said don't leave, they left. And that's what I said before I don't know how many weeks we are learning this thing, but part of what Rav Dester had to deal with was this lack of faith in the Gedolim. Because how can you explain that you told us not to leave, you yourself left, and now also what you told us was wrong. So there is the idea, what was basically developed, what we called Das Teire, Dat Torah, which means basically what the rabbi says goes. And in a way, there is I gave a shiur about it once. If not, I can give it here. But this is something very, very interesting that was obviously developed mamash lately. But I don't want to talk about other. Let's just go back to our issue. Okay. Short.
If you say that's the thing, I'm having trouble. What's the Abarbanel and Ramban? They're both Rishonim, right? So Ramban says Abraham sinned, and that's why we went down to Mitzrayim. And he gives different reasons what Abraham did. Abarbanel says anybody who says that David chata, hu chote. So you have two Rishonim. Which one am I supposed to follow? If I say, let's say I were living at the time, the Abarbanel or the Ramban, and they would have both passed it. How do I say which
None of them makes a psak. That's the idea.
I'm
and I
having
think
trouble with this.
so. This is the beauty. And the Gemara asked it. The Gemara asked the question. But that's in halacha. מכיוון שהללו מטמאים והללו מטהרין. This תלמידי חכמים says it's tahor. This תלמידי חכמים says it's tahor. כיצד אדע מה לעשות? What should I do? אלא עשה אוזנך כאפרכסת. What does it mean, כאפרכסת? You should remember it. You don't know what is in Hebrew. But you remember it because you were born when there was still a phone. Like that. I remember that too. Okay? I was not born into a cell phone. Okay? I was born, I remember the one with the chuga. Okay? Afarkeset is the one that you put to your ear. Okay? That's the thing. Okay? Or if you really remember, the one that you do that, you remember that? Okay. So this is called afarkeset. And the afarkeset is something that you listen carefully. עשה אוזנך כאפרכסת, ושמע את דברי המטהרים והטמאים. Listen to what they say, and then make a decision. It's on you. It's on you. And it's okay. And you know what? Every year, you can come up with a new theory. I love, especially Sefer Bereshit, every time I prepare a drasha, every drasha is different, and it might contradict what I said last year. Now, no one remembers it besides me, so I'm not worried. But the thing is that I am happy that I contradicted myself. Why? It means what? That I saw a new thing. I grew, my perspective changed. I read a parshan in a different way. I read a new parshan that I didn't know about him or her. The idea is that I don't know who comes before me. I don't like to come to a shiur with yellow papers that I had for 10 years. Okay? I think someone told me that Rav Soloveitchik would always come with a new, what do you call it, a paper pad, whatever it is. And when they ask him, why don't you use what you said last year? I think he almost answered, I didn't eat what I ate last year, right? This is the idea. The idea is you come new. And this is not halacha. This is hashkafa. This is interpretation. Okay, halacha. So we have framework. We have halachic framework. You can say there is the majority, you follow the majority, הולכים אחרי הרוב. Sometimes you can, בשעת הדחק, you can rely on A and B and C. In a framework of halacha, it's much easier. In a way, that's why it's so difficult with olam hashkafa. And you know, when you do tshuva, you don't do tshuva only on maasim, you also do tshuva on what? On machshavot and midot, which are more difficult, much more difficult, because it's not tangible. It's not tangible, and you need to be truly honest with yourself that what? That you did something wrong with your thoughts, and to do tshuva for it. So what I'm saying is, yeah, it's a struggle. And you know what? Judaism is not an island of stability, okay, and calmness. I think everyone knows that, but it gives you tremendous hope and faith. And that's part of being a religious person. It's not just to go, to ask yourself a question. And you know what? Today is a different day than yesterday. And today, you know what? I do believe that, you know what? I think that the Get Al Tnai that the soldiers of King David gave, that's באמת the reason. Why? Because I'm now dealing with the Masechet Gittin. In a year from now, when I'm dealing with Masechet Tumura, I would say that no, I think that David HaMelech had a different problem. Yes, Naftali.
I grew up in a conservative community, okay? And coming in the 50s and the 60s after World War II, and not living in New York, okay? It seemed to be the right way to be able to open up to something in that American culture to where you want people not to talk to you or to give you jobs or
Mm-hmm.
and so it's complicated, you know, in terms of what you know. I want to say it didn't work though. That was the main point. That's the main point.
Got you.
So I was trying to figure why that was the main point.
Okay.
Not to get to it.
No. So I think I don't know if people heard you. So now,
Where does biblical criticism start and legitimate questions on Torah begin? Where's that line?
Okay. So two things. So Naftali first. Naftali said that when he grew up, he says conservatism tried to create this harmony. Let's call it, between religion and modernity. I hope I understood you correctly. And basically, the question is always, you know, what's the balance? Like, what's the balance? What's the fine line that you go between these two? As we know, you know, I'm not going to give now a shiur on all the streams of Judaism, but we know that Reform and conservatives are not working. The fastest growing movement in America is the unaffiliated. After that, it's orthodoxy. Okay, you know, that's the problem. Okay, unaffiliated is mamash lo tov. Okay, but definitely in terms of growing, in terms of people, it's orthodoxy that was basically eulogized in the 40s and the 50s. Okay, people thought that it's gone. Why? Part of it's rituals, part of it's the commitment. There's no question about it. Okay, so but we are not doing an analysis for. I'm not criticizing anyone after what we read. Then the question is also what's the difference? What is the line between biblical criticism or critical analysis of the biblical figures and questions? Just question to understand the text and the behaviors and the actions. Very good. And the answer is, I don't know. Okay, we need to move forward a bit. חז"ל היו בעלי לב טהור. ואני לא... אני לא צריך ללמוד מיצחק אבינו, אני מלמד בסמינר למורים ולהורים שיש להבין את הילד, ויצחק שלא הבין איננו בגובה שלי, אלא תחת הגובה שלי. עליו ללמוד בסמינר המורים שלי, ואז יבין איך מחנכים ילדים. So he is talking about יצחק. רב שמשון רפאל הירש דווקא, he is the one to criticize יצחק and רבקה for their lack of understanding of education. This is a must read piece of רב שמשון רפאל הירש. You're looking at me like אני פה מפלנטה אחרת. So look at רב שמשון רפאל הירש on בראשית, on ויגדלו הנערים, ויהי עשיו איש יודע ציד איש שדה ויעקב איש תם Yoshev Oalim, that when the youth grew, Esav became a hunter and Yaakov was a Talmid Chacham, whatever. So Rabbi Shimshon Raphael says, what does it mean, Vayigdelu HaNe'arim? Only when they grew up, you saw such a... So says Rabbi Shimshon Raphael, they were twins. And Yitzchak and Rivka made a terrible mistake. He says, a much terrible educational mistake. They thought they are twins, so we're going to dress them alike, and we're going to teach them alike. And he says that was a mistake. He says you should teach each one of them Chanoch Lanar al pi darko. He says Dafka, by teaching Esav what they taught Yaakov, he created resentment to it. They had to teach Esav how to be a Jewish hunter. There is such a thing. But not what? But not to teach him how to be a Talmid Chacham. That was not his personality. So they created resentment. Now, by the way, we know. We have in yeshivot, even in yeshivot, not everyone can learn Gemara. So if you teach them Gemara and you drill it into them, they will hate it. So now many yeshivot are proud to say that what? They have different, what do you call it? Tracks, right. יש לנו track של גמרא, intense גמרא, track של not intense גמרא, track של track של טיולים, track של חסד, כל מיני דברים. Why do you think in the modern times we have so many yeshivot? For the Americans, for the Israelis, all sorts of things. Okay, we do Katif every Tuesday, and we do Chesed every Monday, and we do only Torah. Yes, יש ישיבות כאלה. And why? Because we understand it's not one size fits all. That's what Rabbi Shimshon Raphael says about Yitzchak and Rivka. So he takes this one and he says, you are teaching, you are like an educator, you think that they can come and learn from you, that's a terrible mistake. That's Rabbi Shimshon Raphael's second time criticism on the Avot. Okay. Now, Rav Aviner continues, כך לא לומדים תנ"ך. This is not how you learn תנ"ך. אתה שוכח על מי אתה מדבר. You forget who you're talking about, or to, or about really. ודאי שכל אדם טועה. אך איזה אדם הוא יצחק אבינו? לא אדם כמונו, אלא אדם מפלנטה אחרת. He likes that, get the פלנטה אחרת. He says Yitzchak is a man, but he's a person, but he's from a different planet. That's basically saying he's not like you, he might be an angel, in my opinion. אם ראשונים בני מלאכים אנו בני אנשים, אם ראשונים בני אנשים אנו כחמורים. The Gemara in Shabbat says that if the Rishonim are like children of angels, we are like people. And if they are like people, we are like donkeys. Now, okay. Now, I look at that and I am really not impressed. And why? Why I'm not impressed? Because there are many, many opinions in the Talmud regarding Dorot Rishonim and Dorot Achonim, early generations and current generations. And each one of them, and I told you so many times, if you hear a rabbi says to you, and I'm sorry, the Talmud says, and I'm not talking about halacha, even with halacha, but definitely with hashkafa, the Talmud says that's what you need to think, you need to raise your hand and say, Rabbi, do you say it based on learning the entire Talmud? And this is the only opinion. If he says yes, check it out. If he says no, this is just one opinion, accept it. Because the Talmud is definitely a composition of so many different opinions, different people, different surroundings, different societies, different understandings of the situation at hand. I will give you one, just as a dugma, and we will conclude, we'll go daven mincha. But I will tell you, there is one sugya, I think I taught it in the OU once, about yesh mazal Israel and en mazal Israel. I think so. If there is a mazal to Israel or not. So there is a debate in the Gemara. Yesh mazal or en mazal. So some of the rabbis of the Amoraim says yesh mazal Israel, which means you are under the control of the mazal, and sometimes you are what? You are unlucky. And therefore, the Meiri, Rabbi Menachem HaMeiri, who lived in the end of the 13th century, beginning of the 14th century in Provence, Perpignan, what they call. He says, those Amoraim said yesh mazal Israel, but they didn't really believe in what they said. They just said it out of their experience. They were poor, they didn't have a position, what they should have, and they had troubles with their wife and their children. So everything in their life was what? Shlemazels. Okay, so they says, okay, if we are shlemazels, probably yesh mazal Israel, and this is why we are not God has like a direct providence over us. There is, but there is a mazal, and we basically was predetermined for what? For poverty and shlemazaliyut. That's the Menachem Ameiri, Rabbi Menachem Ameiri, which means what? Sometimes when Amora said something, he says it not because it's Torah Misinai. This is what? This is understanding of his life experiences, and that's okay. Did you ask yourself why in the Talmud you have all sorts of things that has nothing to do with halacha? And I'm not talking about the demons that the Rambam says that you should not pay attention to it. I'm talking about just behaviors. How to behave, what to eat, how to deal with people. Nothing to do, mamash, nothing to do with halacha. Did you ask yourself why we have it in the Talmud? I guess not. Now it's the right time to ask yourself that question, okay? Because there is a variety of opinions, and sometimes why don't we reject minority opinion? Why Rabbi Yehuda Anasi decided to put a minority opinion in the Mishnah? Answer is because there is going to be a time that you might need it. So you need to know that it exists. There's nothing wrong with it. What I'm saying is, and with that I will end, is that I understand, the only thing I understand, I think, is where he's coming from, like with Rav Dessler. But when you take a very extreme, in my opinion, it's my opinion, extreme opinion of Rav Avinel, and to try to portray them the way he portrays them, and to say that you are never allowed to criticize them. It's only Rab Shimshon Raphael Hirsch twice already, okay? Twice, it's not perurim, not even twice. And I think I found more than just twice. I think it's, in a way, you create a world of people who just going to what? To obey it and to read it. And now I just want to ask one more question, and with that I'm ending. Now it sounds like a rabbi. I said, this is the last thing already 3 times. So how should I read Tanakh? So when I read that Natan HaNavi comes to David HaMelech and says to him the mashal of Kivsat Harash, the poor guy with a little lamb, and David says Chatati. So how should I read it? Chatati אבל לא באמת, לא באמת חטאתי, חטאתי אבל לא חטאתי. Like, how am I about to learn it? A. B. When I learn and I go to Torah שבעל פה, and there is a discussion upon discussion in different entire places in the Shas regarding what exactly David did. Should I ignore it? Should I say that they try to understand in his madrega? Because none of the answers given in the Talmud says what? לא חטא. It says, כל האומר דוד חטא אינו אלא טועה. My interpretation is that if you look at David HaMelech only through the prism of that chet, without looking at his entire life, you are to'eh. You are definitely to'eh. This is but again, this is my interpretation, might be different interpretations. But I think this is the idea. I don't understand how can you read Tanakh the way he suggested, unless you are like a Tuki. Hey, you could just repeat the sentences, and this is a wonderful life for people who are, again, you see, I'm not condemning. If it's good, if it works for people, labriut. I think that it does not encourage you to be a deep thinker, which I would encourage people to do. Okay, zehu, chag sameach.